So that was one question. But the other question had to do with signage. I know we've previously talked about signage. One of my remaining concerns is the fact that we've kind of branded ourselves as being the hospitality hub. And so one of the things that we pride ourselves on is the fact that tourists get off at those 3 exits and they come and they visit our downtown square. So given the fact that that will no longer be possible with the barrier walls, has there been any more consideration of things that might take place so that we can continue to represent those who have chosen to do business as business owners in our square?
Sure.
Because there's no forecasting on how this might impact them. And there hasn't even been any forecasting in terms of how many people they may lose. And so all of this is conjecture, but it is a valid concern, so I'm just wondering what we're doing proactively around that issue.
So included in the project are, there are blue informational signs, and they will be at the entrances, prior to the entrances of the managed lanes, and that will just basically say next services in the 12 miles. And that's the industry standard. The existing logo signs for the general purpose lanes those will remain as is. So if the purpose is that if someone wants to stop and wants to get off, they will know that they need to stay in the general purpose lanes. That if they get into the managed lanes, they won't get out until north of the system.
And I'm sorry, this is so uncomfortable for me, but I just want to make sure that we are represented, because when we had the initial conversations, we talked about the fact that the industry standard wouldn't necessarily work for McDonough because our entrances into our city are on the I-75 corridor. So we talked during some of those meetings about the possibility of creatively utilizing other services, maybe other grants that might erect different types of signs. I just don't want that conversation to drop off because it is so much a part of sustainability for us. You know, I know everybody is focused on the need to get traffic through, but we're also trying to get folks in.
Sure.
And when people historically might stop at the gas station, and I always say Mountain Dew because I love Mountain Dew, but where they might just stop and pick up a Mountain Dew and talk to somebody and they say, hey, why don't you go visit our square? It's like 4.5 miles, from this location. If they're not getting off, that won't happen, and we don't know how great those numbers are. So I know GDOT is basically confined to industry standards, but I remember one of the gentlemen who was with you indicated that there might be some other programs that are related to GDOT that might be able to help with gateway entrances and things of that nature. So I just don't want that to drop, and that kind of also segues into the issue of whether or not we've been able to come up with a tree mitigation plan. We were concerned about, and I'll use Councilperson Nabi's terminology, looking like a concrete jungle. That's not McDonough, that's not what we want to look like. And so I just wonder if we've gone further with the development of those types of plans.
As far as the signage goes and like gateway grants and things like that, we had done a little bit of outreach. We will continue to do that outreach with the city of McDonough and try to set something up, because there are several things that we'd love to share with you guys that
Because you guys know more than we
right,
do.
that
Yes.
will help you take care of the city.
Okay.
So for sure. As far as the trees go, first and foremost, I can tell you, contractor's not going to cut down a tree if they don't have to, because that's additional money. But we have been working with EPD and with the contractor to minimize the amount of trees that are going to be removed as part of drainage and just as part of regular, normal construction activities. I'm real excited about it, because we got some things squared away with some environmental permitting that will allow some of those trees, and the
Those a result of the
landscaping.
conversation with you guys initially,
Yeah.
and went back.
And
And the
I-
landscaping at 2081 that will remain, so.
I
we're excited
appreciate
about
that, because I remember when we were in our housing boom, one of the things that was often said is that it's more costly for developers to cut down trees than it is for them to save them. But they would always say on the back end that clear cutting was the best route. So, you know, it was easier to take them all down than it was to save one. So just kind of keep an eye out.
There was also the sound issue that we had talked about, the type of sound barriers, and whether or not you were going to do the lattice work that's falling apart just north of us as you, in Clayton County, where the slats and things were, and, you know, and they were easily damaged or seemed to just fall apart. And you had said that you would do something about, that y'all were going to use a different system as you approach down here, yet I've seen some of the slat work continue, and no one's come back to us and talked to us about anything that we are now saying at this table. No one's, that I'm aware of, has contacted anybody at the city, or written us a letter, or brought us up to date, or said that they're pursuing any of these things. We have conversations, and that seems to be the end of it. And we really do, you know, appreciate anything that you're doing, but if you are doing things and we don't know about it, you know, it leaves us feeling as though we are not being looked after. And also, while you're here, please take this message back. We have tremendous amount of trash on I-75, and trying to pull off in the off lanes. We have so much tire trash and other things. I mean, it's just hazardous if you had to try to pull off either against the, you know, the inner lane or the outer lane. And I realize funds are limited, but no matter where you ride, coming this way, there's just tremendous amount of trash on both sides.
Okay. Anybody else?
So
Bert?
I can answer, Ms. Nani,
I
one of
want
the,
to give you a chance from the
that's okay,
civil
yeah,
authority
on the
to share
sound
the
walls,
information.
there was, 2 public meetings held, it's probably been 2 months ago, on the sound walls, and they invited folks who were adversely impacted, right next to the interstate, and actually showed, the examples of the sound walls, and they are different than the ones, that you're talking about. Now, I don't know what you're specifically looking for, but they have examples of those that I'm sure GDOT could bring to you, but we had, nobody showed up to the public meetings. They did, they voted, through the mail, or they could call in, so there were, a way to get public input, but we were there, I think it was at Eagles Landing Middle, and then at 2081, and I just went to answer any questions that came up, and it was not, you know, wasn't my portion to be there.
And why are we not included
Yeah.
in that information? We keep asking. You bypassed us when you started these lanes. You did nothing to contact the city and involve us. Once things happened out at Mount Zion, you went right on doing something that totally impacted the city and made no effort then, and it continues. You know, and that's just another example. 2081, you have it there, and nobody from the city is aware.
Those meetings were specifically for the property owners that are along I-75, so I think, you know, it was very specific to them to get their input on the kind of sound wall. But, I mean, I understand your point, and we've talked about it before, and I think there's a very standard process that GDOT goes through when they're doing those meetings. But anyway, I just want to let you know, it is a different surface than what is up on I-75 in Clayton.
And while I appreciate it's the property owner, it is this community that has to live with those decisions, and the people that represent this community need an opportunity to participate. And I don't know how else to say it, you know. In fact, I can't even be nice about it anymore,
Okay, Bert.
you know. So thank you.
Bert, thank you so much,
Yeah.
ladies, and I see we got a friend of ours locally here that just came in, Ms. Dana Lemon on the board of DOT. Dana would welcome you, and of course, I hadn't had you and Ms. Lillian Jackson any chance to say anything, but Lillian kind of came up front, provide this information. Lillian, do you have any comments that you might like to share in conjunction with these managed lanes, this tremendous project?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate being able to come back to you. The concerns that have been raised, I think I'm documenting everything that's being said,
Thank you.
first of all, so that you know, and all the questions being raised, and who might be the person that responds to you appropriately. And again, I guess just to echo Bert's comments about the sound walls, is the federal, and it's hard to kind of get your mind around, I know, but there are federal regulations that kind of guide how we reach out to the impacted audiences for sound walls, for their look, for their height, for their width, for where they'll be located. And so those specific people, buildings, businesses were contacted as part of that federal NEPA regulation, and they got invitations to appear at those public meetings or to send in their comment about where they think noise walls should be located, what they should look like, how deep they are, how big they are. And so that's why perhaps, although you may have seen a press release in the local newspaper about it, the direct communication goes to the impacted businesses and residents in that area.
No, but
If that's helpful at all.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask Bert a question, and it is good to see you again. I have to echo Councilperson Nadi's concern, because the majority of the individuals that are along that corridor are businesses. I am approximately 2.5 miles from the interstate. I can stand outside my house 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, on up until sunrise, and I can hear the cars. And so the residents which might be impacted by the types of walls, the locations, the aesthetics, etc., would not be able to comment. And I do understand federal guidelines, but I think one of the things that we're trying to do as a city and as a county as well is to try and create an element of being customer friendly. And so the regs might not support it, but at the same time, we can take a less stringent approach in making sure that the citizens know. That's one thing. So I guess in hindsight, if it's possible to send that information to our community development mayor, city administrator, just so we could at least take a look at what has been decided, and if there is any opportunity for public comment via the internet, let us know that, because trust me, at the end of the day, when the whips come out, we're the whipping post. They're looking at us. They can't get to Washington, they're coming to us. And so the other thing too, and I know this is something that probably isn't possible, but it's just kind of a concern that always lurks in the back of my mind relative to the whole issue of dynamic pricing. Are there any provisions for individuals who, and I think I already know the answer, I just need to say it out loud, but low-income individuals or senior citizens? You know, I'm very concerned about the fact that our seniors continue to pay into a system where they don't get a whole lot of benefit. So I don't know if that's been a part of the discussion, but.
Yeah, so thanks for that question. So we've had a couple of programs, one that we have already implemented and one that we are exploring right now. The first thing is, we get a lot of what they call unbanked, underbanked. They don't either don't have bank accounts, or they don't have a full bank account with debit cards and credit cards and those kind of things. So, and if you go into a Walgreens or a CVS, you will see a Peach Pass available there on the gift card rack. And so you can now pay cash to get a Peach Pass and to reload that account. You don't have to have a credit card or a debit card to do that. And so that's meant to get to those folks who just don't. Some people don't want to give their credit card over. They're leery of that transaction, and they're just cash preferred. So we've done that. That's now available in statewide and all CVS's. Right now, it's just on 85 corridor in Walgreens, but those will be statewide by the time this project comes online. So that's one thing we've done. The second thing we're doing is exploring what we're calling a commuter credit program, where if you take the bus, for example, you would earn a credit towards in your toll account that you would be able to, if you were late one day and needed to drive, instead of taking a bus, that you would be able to accumulate credits and then be able to use the toll lane. And so we are right in the throes of that now. To be honest with you, the 85 project is so busy there's so many cars that use it, that we really giving away free trips. It was counterintuitive because, you know, it's gonna fill the lane up that much more. It's too congested already. But we think for this project and the Northwest Corridor project, we really think that would be a great option for those who like to say, you know, rely on transit, as McDonough said, and then also have a way to earn their way to get into the lanes. And the other thing that it does too, that I really like personally, is inexpensive on the front end of the rush hour and on the back end of the rush hour. And so it really incentivizes people to come in early, or to come in late if they can. Some people can't, obviously, but they could actually modify their schedule and get a cheaper ride in, rather than riding really during that peak hour. And that's the thing we've seen on 85. The rush hour is starting to flatten out a little bit. Instead of having such a high peak right in the middle of the peak hour, people are coming early, or they're coming through later, both in the morning and the afternoon, and taking advantage of that lower price. So they're getting an incentive by, if they're able to modify their behavior. So that's the other thing that we're seeing there. But the community credit program is a little early. Now we do not really have that in place yet, but we were certainly working on that with an idea of having it ready by the time this project opens in January 2017.
And it might be a good idea to add some of that information to Georgia Rides, you know, because a lot of times businesses, other governmental entities that have a lot of employees watch that site, but they won't necessarily get that information and utilize it to maybe modify some folks' schedule.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, thank you.
And Mayor, on a very positive note, I was at a doctor's in Atlanta at Piedmont, and they said, when are you gonna get those managed lanes? We can't wait. But, you know, it takes us forever to try to leave the city. Trying to go to the, you know, beaches, like having to plan 2 extra days vacation to get out of the city or to get back into the city. And I hear it all the time when I'm in Atlanta. When are you getting the managed lanes? We can't wait to buy, you know, a ticket through. So, you know, there's a lot of people that are really excited about it, you know, when they are leaving for vacation or traveling, you know, to Macon or the south of Atlanta. So that's good.
Ms. Barron, do you have anything else?
No,
Ms.
sir. Thank you.
Y'all-
So much for having me. We'll follow.
We'd always like to have you good folks, and have Bert, Ms. Jackson, and as always, Ms. Lunn. Thank you for your presentation, thank you for your update. Good evening. Thank you so much. Dana, do you have any comment?
I'm good there.
Always good to see you. Thank you. All right. Okay. Ready? Yes, sir. Come have a seat. Thank you for being here, and giving us. I can keep this phone off on me. Yeah, well, I mean, it's wrong. That's right. I get some good calls, Daddy. Oh, Mama. Thank you, bud.
I'm just picking on you.
Thank you, bud. Yeah.
I was asked to bring y'all up on SPLOST 4 and the progress that the city has made concerning getting close to a figure that we will ask to be included in the county's first bond issue. The city has come up with a document that shows it's about a little over $7 million that you would like to receive in this first bond issue. We have run the figures. We had a conference with the city attorney and city manager, and we ran all this by Bill Camp, the finance director, on this project, and Bill has assured us that this proposal is within budget, and that the items listed are within the criteria of what was voted upon. And I would like to add a couple of things to this. You need to understand that this is an estimate of what you would like to do. You can add to it, you still have some room if you wish. But when you're dealing with parks and recreation, as an example, I think it's best that y'all figure about what the capital improvements are going to be, and not specifically what the improvement's going to be. And that's our recommendation there. once you get your funds, then of course you can tie it down as to which directions you're going, because a lot of times, these projects are ever changing based upon need. Of course, your public safety items there, we're just asking for public safety, but, as an example, we got 624 for radio. It may be that you have a wrecked car between now and the time you get your money, and you may want to use that to replenish your cars, just as an example. And then your street improvements, you've made those comments there and your desires to make the improvements. But again, you may have something unforeseen that you need to move the money around on. I'll be glad to answer any questions you got, but staff's done a good job in getting this put together, and it does meet the criteria, which is what we were concerned about, and make sure that we were getting something that we could pay for.
Buddy, it's nice to see you.
How you?
How you doing? You said we may have a little extra to play around with. Do you know if around about an estimate of how much?
What we've always done is that we've never got too far out on the limb.
Okay.
We've tried to stay conservative where we would know absolutely, for an absolute fact, that we were gonna get enough sales tax money to make our payments.
Okay.
Now, the way this thing is set up is that we're going through the county, because the county's bond rating is good. And that saves us interest as we go through it, okay? It saves us cost. The more we get up front, the lesser the cost is for borrowing the money, or paying the money. But what happens is that once you issue those bonds, starting the next month, all of the sales tax has to be used for the payment of the bonds. Okay. So if we have too much money borrowed, it delays us from getting any money later in the year. A city like Hampton, who is not planning on borrowing money, they plan on doing theirs piecemeal, they're gonna have to wait until the bond payment is made, and then the next month, they'll get a lump sum to bring them back current, you see. I really think the county's gonna have to go back at least one more time, and probably two more times, to get the funds that are needed. So I think we'll have some more ability to get the funds to build other projects. The other thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to get into arbitrage, because you want to be able to borrow the money and build the projects, and build them within the time that's specified. Because if you don't, then you got to start paying the penalty, which is money out of your pocket. So we've tried to stay conservative. We've tried to get enough money to build the projects that we think we can build by the time the county is ready to issue additional bonds.
No, go ahead.
So, we're expecting to get those bond payments in around October-ish, or?
We hope that they will float the bonds in October, and we'll get the money in November. Now, the bond validation has already occurred. We've already gone through all the legal proceedings. It's just a question of the county and the city telling the bond people we are ready to go to the market. And then they make a decision, do we go to the public market and sell them on the public sale, or do we go to a private placement? And they do that based upon what is the best return on the investment for the county and for the city.
You have comments?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to, okay, I'll just ask it. When we issued, or at least when we approved our bond list, we approved it categorically. We got parkland improvements, public safety, etc. Buddy, was there any opportunity, given all of the recent conversations about the public safety building, was there any opportunity in the manner that we approved our SPOS 4 list to add our public safety building into our bonding?
Probably so, under your public safety. I think it would fit under that, but I would need to see, one, how much money you're talking about, and how quickly that could be put out for bid. As an example, Locust Grove started over a year ago putting theirs together, and they are going to do what is known as a contract management job, whereby the contractor is really their agent to build it for them. And they have not finalized their plans yet.
Okay.
So
Alright.
it's, if y'all have got your plans put together and you've done your pricing on it, then it's a question of whether or not it will fit into your borrowing power.
Part B to that, I'm sorry, just real quick, part B to that question.
Yep.
I know we're conservative, how conservative are we? How much more room do we have to move?
I did not ask
Okay,
Mr. Camp to tell us that, but I can find out and let you know.
Now, Craig,
I think it's the same thing. We can't carry it forward, though, can we?
the
Yeah, go ahead,
municipal
Leah.
court complex, the police and public safety complex was a SPOS 3 project. So that's part of the reason why we have everything prepared and ready to go.
Okay.
And so when we began that project with SPOS 3 funds, we used bond funds to acquire the property, both for the public safety building, the new police building, and also for the municipal court complex. But yet we have not been able to begin construction of the, but, you know, our understanding has been we can't carry over the SPOS project from year to year, haven't really been able to find a good way to split it up into phases, and so that is why we have not, up until this point, really talked about it being a SPOS 4 project.
Bill, this is Buddy. I'm in a meeting with the city of McDonough. I've got a question for you concerning the maximum amount that the city can take down in the first rendition and still be comfortable being able to pay it back. How about checking on that? Let me know if you can. If you have to wait till in the morning, then I'll be back to the city. Thanks.
and I guess the other question, and of course, this has not been discussed, and I'm just asking because you're here, if there is possibility and the legal issue or technicality becomes the fact that it started in SPOS 3, can the acquisition be phase 1 and the construction phase 2?
Yes, but I would need to see what was set up
Understood.
in 3.
Mhm.
To see what you can carry over into 4 before I tell you
I
absolutely.
understand.
But, if you could just tell, do you know right offhand, or you want to pull that and let's talk about it tomorrow?
Why don't I pull you the file on that? We
Okay.
looked at that back in 2012.
Okay,
Bill actually looked at that with us, Bill did, and,
okay.
we looked at that pretty
We'll get you the
exhaustively.
answer on it.
And Lee,
Have you already acquired your property?
Yes, sir, we have.
What's SPOS 3 money?
Okay.
Did we do design with that money too?
We did.
of course,
Design work.
Do we have your left over?
Buddy's asking a question.
I'm sorry, sir.
Do we have any money left over
We do,
from 3?
we do,
Do we still have projects that we were not able to complete
we
under
do.
3? All right.
Lee, running the conversation, Craig and I were out with the county yesterday and had 4 or 5 things to deal with, one of which is the Hope Bill. It is not something that we have considered. And I had told you that I felt like now within this time frame, whatever it is, 36 months, the chairman wants a copy of our appraisal. It was in, Adam gave it to me earlier this week, and he was interested in it, and we he'd like to move forward with this with the county commissioners, and of course, we got this asbestos thing that we talked about, Greg and I talked to him about. That's something, if we have a opportunity to modify this, to take care of that, because I believe we can move forward with that. He's ready to go. He wants to bring that to the commissioners. I called out in late this afternoon to get a copy of the appraisal, give to him. I forgot the exact amount, but the asbestos is half of what I initially thought it was gonna be, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000. But I'm just wondering, is this the last opportunity for us to? It is not.
It is not.
Okay.
And Mayor, I just want to publicly raise an objection because I've been involved in that project for about 3 years now. And to know that we've gotten this far, including speaking with Mr. Charlot's son, I'm in regular communication with him. And so you all but banned me from working on it. Now it's another council person involved. I object.
Oh, that's fine. So welcome your objection. Anything else?
I have a question for, Frederick. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, we'll get it all, and then I'll get my
Good.
marching instructions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, maybe it's a question for, Buddy, how much of that pay-go money, is that coming in pretty swiftly, or,
How our payments are coming in, they're coming in about what was estimated.
Good point.
And, you know, we did not put any growth factor in this because we wanted to make sure that we did not levy any property tax to pay for this. So, and that's a commitment that all of the cities and the counties have made, and that's the reason we try to live up to that promise.
So the 7th of August is not a drop dead date. Okay.
I think what we need to do, though, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When is drop dead, or do you know?
Well, August the 1st was what I told was the drop dead date. Here's what we really need to do. If y'all wanna add more projects to this, then y'all have gotta be able to say that we can build these projects. Just getting your money and not building the project, or being ready to build the project, is a mistake. But if you are ready to build the project, you're ready to put it out for bid, and you wanna add it to it, then Bill Camp and I, first thing tomorrow morning, will figure out exactly the maximum amount you can get. But don't borrow it if you can't go put it in the ground.
And put it in a, fixed time frame, right?
Yep. Need to be ready to go is the point. And that's the reason I'm saying is, if you got land that you need to buy, you're ready to go. You know you gotta buy land. If you got a fire truck you need to buy, then you know you're ready to go. And, but if you got a building that you gotta design, or that's gotta be passed around through the mayor and council to get even the colors approved, then you ain't ready. Pardon my English.
No.
Have the English teachers act, I'm sure.
All right, anything? And Fred, you got anything?
No, sir, I'm ready if y'all wanna make any moves on moving stuff, or Adi, we're ready. If not, if y'all wanna save that for another meeting, I'm ready
If
to.
y'all got something you want, once you do this, if you got something you wanna add to it, put it on there, put your estimate on it, and then we could always,
Yeah, we have, the spreadsheet of this is populated, that if we move any monies around, it'll show us and give us the percentages.
I wanna,
And then I know there was one that was on here that was away, was the sidewalk issue in the path, for the 25,000, the paths don't do sidewalks, so you probably need to take that notation off. You can leave the 25,000 there, you can move it somewhere else. That's up to y'all, but we just can't, paths they don't construct sidewalk to do paths, so we can't designate $25,000 for that. That's the only thing, but like I said, if y'all wanna move, if y'all wanna start looking at doing anything, I will say that one of the helpful things would be is to find out from Bill what our total max is before we start doing that.
Good point.
You know, I saw some preliminary numbers.
Yep.
When we were at Buddy's office, Bill had some information, but, you know, I'm a little frightened, and I'm just gonna tell you why. I don't wanna get to that top notch just because recognize that your repayment takes some money back from what you're gonna do with your paygo money.
Yeah.
So we gotta be really judicious and prudent when we add on to the list, and probably not, I would say I wouldn't go above 10, even if he says we could get to 15, you know, just to be conservative. Make these your 10 million specific actual projects that are ready, specifically ready to go within the time frame allotted under the bonding.
Why don't y'all do this? Let's
And
find
that's what we
out.
pretty much have done here. We've done a lot of that here already, but if we make any amendments, that's what we'll do.
We need to know what ballpark we're in.
Okay.
So if this is not a job, if we don't have to make a decision tonight,
Right.
we could bring it back on the 18th. We should get that information from Billy tomorrow and Buddy tomorrow, so we'll know what that number is. We will share that with you all once we get it.
It'll take me until the 18th to get my letter finished. It's gonna be about 85 pages long.
All right.
Yes, sir. But so at that point, if you all wanna meet again, we can put it on there and then look to see what additional.
Yeah, let's see what kind of numbers.
But please be prepared to
Yeah.
knock it out then if you
We'll do it, we'll do it, we'll do it. Thank you, bud.
And if any of y'all need to talk, you got questions about this, call me. And, I may not be there that minute, but I'll get back to you that day or first thing in that next morning.
Same that line.
Very important.
It's of course, if your voice is gruff and tough, it may be the next afternoon. If it's kind and sweet and gentle, it probably be immediately.
Good one. Mayor Council, real quick, bud.
Thanks all of y'all.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Appreciate you, John. Appreciate that.
Y'all please work on him and see what you can do for him.
Thank you, sir.
His mama-
Real quick, Mayor, if you let me, I want
Yeah,
to show
go
you.
ahead, Fred.
And this is part of your pocket. We've actually modified this. This is gonna be, one of the things we've been talking about is how do we track progress, moving forward, and for SPOS 3, I'm gonna give you an example of how we plan on doing that. Right now, on our pay-go list, this is what we have, and I'm gonna give you all a quick analogy of how this works. This is the way we're gonna be able to track our finances moving forward as it relates to our individual SPOS projects. So right now, on our pay-go, we've got 4 projects that's already in the movement in the hopper, the IT. And as you can see, we've already spent some money in IT already in terms of buying our computer systems and so forth and our servers. We're in the move of making that already. This is where we are now. So of the 600,000, we had a lot of it there, I think 6 or 500 in there. We're 7% complete. From the overall pay-go project list as it currently stands, we're only 1.8% complete. So you'll be able to see this as we make modifications, and I'll give you a great example. Y'all just approved an invoice for me at $8,250, okay? So when I pay that bill, that's what it's gonna reflect.
And this will be on our webpage.
And I'm gonna post this on the webpage, so it's gonna be accessible to everybody, so you can see how we're doing. So that is the master list for our pay-go, but as we go to specific lists, and I'll use IT, now you see how we're actually breaking down the IT costs. What's being spent on computers, what's being spent on the Wi-Fi system, the iPads, the storage systems, the network systems, Tyler Technology systems, the service system, the court, and city hall. And so as we make purchases in those areas, there's a lot of totals that might shift a little bit, understanding that we can't go above that number. So you know, if you see something happening and you see us going over in a category, and I'll use this one, let's say for instance we go to 105, then you'll start to see that, hey, Frederick, y'all went over on buying computers, was there a reason for that? Y'all people ask that question. Did we need more computers than we thought we needed? Because at the end, what it's gonna do is gonna take some money from one of these other items, because we've got a tool we can't go over.
Good job.
That will also help us when it comes to us reporting on an annual basis, we have to do our annual reporting. That will help us because we already have this data already captured and available.
Frederick, can you add a variance line? I would anticipate that we wouldn't go over, but just in case we do, in some line, at least citizens would be able to see, they would be able to see it readily.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, you don't have to do it now, but
I'm just making a note.
Okay.
And, yeah, because it could vary up or down, so that if we go over,
Yeah, and you will see that. The key here is you'll see, when you get your project completed, well, it won't tell you because it'll stay stuck at a certain number for a long time. So let's say that's all the computers we purchased. So it'll stay at 38%. What will happen is,
The bottom percentage will be over 100.
well, not really. If he says, I don't need to buy any more replacement computers, and that's it, even though we allotted 107, the difference of the 42,000 versus the 100 will spread down to the bottom. The main kicker is here is that at the end of the day, what you want to see is 100% here, and you want to see those numbers, that number and those numbers line up. You don't want to go over 600,000 because that's all we're allotted to spend. So if we come in under that amount, be able to accomplish anything under that amount, guess what? Now, you'll have some money left over that can go to a paygo project that's already a priority project or a project on your list already. So that money could be, within that category, could be moved. Or we could say, hey, we could do some other things with it and then come to main council and say, look, we're left with $60,000. This is an opportunity for us to change the mic system in this room that we wasn't able to replace. Can we use that fund to do the mics? And you always say yes, and then we authorize, and then it'll equal up. But this would be a good way of us keeping track of our projects moving forward. And I wanted to show you all that. You have it individually, but this tracks, like I said, it tracks to our individual projects as we do them. The cemetery project, I hadn't added that one yet, but as we start to add on, as we start doing more and more projects, the fire truck, you'll see the fire trucks, the percentage, you'll see the 3 payments come in, then you'll see that 100% complete. Fire trucks will be off the table. Citizens will be able to see that and be able to say, oh yeah, they bought the fire trucks. Not only did you see them on the road, you're able to go on the list and see that it was done. And so that's the system we're using. So you have your paygo slots, and then we have our bonded slots, at which point, you know, we're gonna do the very same thing right now. Those are our bonded projects. If those variances change a little bit, we'll change them based on our upcoming meetings. And then we'll have individual tabs, so we have Alexander Park Phase 2. We'll have Alexander Park Phase 2, and we'll list all the projects under Alexander Park Phase 2 with their specific costs, and we'll track them based on that. And you can work back to the invoices, because this spreadsheet will be with every invoice that we do and we pay. So that's the way we're gonna keep track of. As I told y'all, I wasn't here for SPLOST 3, but I'm here for SPLOST 4, so we're gonna do the best we can to manage the project in here, in the system.
Good job.
And also, there might be a provision for us to go away from this. We're still investigating with Encode, because we're thinking that we might have been paying for a project management tool. If that's in there and it's worthwhile, I might shift this over to the Encode system. That way everything is tracked through, even the invoices once they're approved. And I'll bring that back and show you all what that looks like. If we're able to migrate into that format and migrate away from this, we'll do that, as long as we can still keep the information on the website so people can see it. But that's just a little bit much more efficient way of doing it if that system exists. Right now, we have a call into Tyler to find out if we actually do have that module. But I wanted to present that to you all so you all see that there is going to be a system in place to keep track of progress as well as finances as it relates to the specific projects.
and then we won't drive everybody crazy,
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
including ourselves.
Yes, ma'am.
Good, Fred. Any other information you want to share with us? Fred?
That's it on this.
Thank you.
And, Mayor, just quickly say something. I've tried to encourage, the council to think about SPOS projects early on, and to decide what they're gonna do, and decide whether or not they need, like, that we're talking about Locust Grove. They picked the project, they did all the stuff that was necessary, so that it's ready to go on SPOS. It's shelf ready, it's ready to go, they know they can bond it, and they know they can build it. And I really hope that over the course of the next 6 years, that while we're in the midst of all of this, that we're all beginning to project and think about what we need for the next floss and pick those capital projects that we really wanna see done, that require that kind of activity, so that we are ready for the next one, and we don't have to, worry about what we're doing. Because, that would have been prudent, even without a municipal court at this point.
Yes, and real quick now, to piggyback on Ms. Vincent, that's something that we've already developed, excuse me, Gail, I'm sorry. That's something that we did last year, initially put together a capital improvements program with a list of capital improvements we needed, and we phased them over 5 years. Obviously, that's something that we're trying to refine even more so that can be, we're putting it as part of the budget. What we're doing now is capturing some of those things, and Pete and I have been working to make sure that those major capital projects are hitting the list, and you're seeing it. I presented that to you all last year, the chart where we did the capital improvement program 5 years out. I think the total amount was 62 million, if I remember correctly. It's right around 62 million worth of capital projects that are out there over the next 5 years. We understand some of those won't get funded just because, the funding sources vary between general fund to SPLOS to grant monies to whatever. And so grants obviously is something that's not always consistent, so those might get pushed in and out based on priority, but I'll even talk about that a little more in a further presentation, but that's something that we're working to get.
But it's like what they said, they're still working just to get to the bonded stage to be able to spend their money. So, and picking colors, I know I was being kind of fussy about, gee, we need to take a look at the colors on our courthouse. But the reality is, if we're ready when the SPLOS comes up, and we're gonna build a building, or we're going to do anything like that, we need to have all of that done.
Let's move on down to item number 9. Rodney, we've got 2 items. We've got Greg Nobles, with a project on Nell Road, and, looks like the public hearing vote is postponed to 8/18, but Greg, we welcome you. Anything, comments you might like to share with this council relative to this, application?
What I'd like to point out, good evening, everybody, is we're trying to right a wrong, so to speak, on this project where that in the course of realigning Highway 20 and Nell Road, these lines got skewed, and so what should be a good highway commercial lot is R75. And neither side of the, Ronnie just put up a diagram. If you can tell, the lot is comprised of the blue and yellow triangle, and it's split. So neither side of this lot is good for anything, the way it currently is zoned. So we're trying to get a C2 zoning on that so we can hopefully bring in another quality retailer to that area is what we're looking for.
Anyone have anything?
And the property next to it, C2.
Property next to it on the left is C2. The property on the right is a multifamily tract, the villas at South Point.
Right, which is currently built.
Yeah.
It's currently built. And actually what we touch up there is just the driveway and the front office area. There's no, the residences are removed further back, so they won't really be impacted.
I think you're right, the way it's set up now, you can't really do anything with either section.
It's kind of stuck. And if you're marketing to a quality retailer, then that's the first thing they want to know is it's zoned, and they don't, a lot of times don't want to wait on the zoning process, so we're just trying to get ahead of it.
What's the size?
It's approximately between, around 1.6 acres.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Yeah, 1.6, right. Rodney, do you have any?
Yes, I do, Mayor. I want to refresh your memory as far as yourself and the council. The subject property is in the red outline on the screen. How we got here to where we are today is this is the Mays property, which is in the red outline that was annexed to create the western boundary of your South Point development area. This is the residual piece where we had the zoning conflict. It was residual left over from the South Point property we know today and the villas at South Point. And it had the mixed zoning of it was a PUD at that time, R75, R100, and then this is what we then have today with the current situation. So the reason why we've asked for the extension to the 18th, there were initial conditions here on this area of the property with maze that do traverse across a portion of the subject property. And then I have provided the applicant with our most recent zoning case, which is on the State Route 20 corridor, that they were given. This was the property that was across from South Point. And we will be finalizing the mediation on the conditions of zoning and tailoring those. So in that way, there will be a matchup with our other development standards along 20.
We would be going to C3, though, right? This would be rezoned to C3?
No, sir, C2.
C2? Okay.
Council persons, anybody have any questions? Always good to see you, Greg. I just want to be sure about it. I just read it while I was looking at you, and I postponed, but certainly we welcome with the comment.
Thank you, appreciate that.
That gives us a heads up.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Okay, Rodney, let's, and we'll see you on the 18th.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Gerald Swiniger, 154 Macon, Councilman Stewart's district. Rodney, won't you bring that to our attention, and I'll call on Dave.
Yes, Mr. David Williams is going to join us as representative for Mr. Swiniger.
Yeah, won't you kind of bring us up to date, and then we'll call on with Williams. Yeah.
Okay, in your packets of information, this is your subject property in the red outline.
Right.
It's at the intersection of College and Macon Street. This is the main part of the estate tract. The applicant, which will be going over shortly, is to add this property to that property. Now, what we have is, historically, the subject property was part of a planned residential townhome development. And it goes back to ordinance 00-02-21 in 2000. And there was a list of conditions that I have provided to Mr. Williams for us to go through. We would be removing the RTD zoning because a portion of the RT zoning property is now a personal residence and also occupied by Shiloh Baptist Church. So it's fairly clear-cut, resolving an existing zoning from 2000.
Makes perfect sense.
I couldn't have said it better.
All right.
Mr. Swiniger has bought this property. He owns one of the adjacent properties on the other side. And he just wants to, his plans are to leave it like it is, but if he ever sells it, he doesn't want a multifamily coming next to him. So we're just downzoning actually to a residential. It's the same use, not the same zoning, but the same use on things that are on both sides and behind it. And we just thought it would be more consistent with the neighborhood and make everybody happy.
And you can tell him for me, I said thank you, because that's where the old Brown residence was, and lightning struck and it burned in a matter of less than 10 minutes one night. So,
6:30.
I mean,
Wow.
6:30 in the morning, yeah.
Y'all know the property
Because
better
it was
than I
all
do.
lighter time and it was gone, so.
Jerry's behind us.
Oh,
He's behind us.
thank you. Thank you very much.
I think everybody feels pretty comfortable what you folks trying to do here.
Well, I thanked him over the years for what he did in saving the house that's now his own, and helping save Macon Street overall and College as a whole, so.
Yeah.
We're still in trade.
Are you going to take care of all those other houses on College Street for us?
I get you. All right, you have,
No,
well, we're happy to have you. Of course, we'll, move forward this on the 18th. I don't know whether it'll be early on or not, but I'm very pleased to see that you're accounting curious.
we appreciate your confidence.
Yeah,
We're
thank you.
seeing you.
Thank you. Keith, looks like you're number 10 and number 11. Come up and join us. Jerry, thank you for being here. Always good to see you. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, come in.
The first item is, we've been looking at the water loss program that we have going on, replacing, Ronnie's group's almost completely replaced all of the old poly lines, all of the galvanized lines. And the next thing we ran into was looking at our meters, and our meters are warranted for 10 years, and a majority of those, about 85 to 90% of those are 12+ years old, which means if a meter goes bad, you replace it. While we were going through the process of trying to get the FCC license renewed, Lee Hatcher helped us a lot with that. Somewhere along the line, between administrations, the letter was lost or passed forward. But anyway, we got the FCC license approved. Then we found out that the current meters that we have, there's a wire unit that comes up that we use for the radio read, and those are going to be obsolete within the next 3 years. So instead of just deciding that we're going to replace it with the current meters that we have, we looked at other meter systems. And what we found was a meter system that is compatible with ENCODE that other cities and communities are using, and that it's cheaper in the long run. And it's a 20-year meter. So anything happens to that meter, somebody hits the endpoint, which is the wire unit with a lawnmower, they replace the entire unit. Where the current unit, if that hits, it costs you $125 to replace that meter. So
Plus the time and effort.
plus the time and effort. So in doing the package, I asked Ronnie to include, and this is not just we're going to do this overnight. What I've asked him to do is not put any more money into the current meters that we have, but we can start replacing these meters and do this over 4 years using some reserve money. He has some budgeted money, and just start working in that direction. The end point for this is that we're going to have a radio read unit that will be tower read, that the ladies downstairs can push a button and it will read the meters. The other thing that this is going to provide is that if 305 Racetrack Road normally uses 100 gallons a day and then 2-3 days in a row uses 1,000 gallons, it will send an alert to Ronnie or to the ladies, and they can contact the homeowner and alert them to the fact that they have a leak. Now that's beneficial in helping the customer get the leak fixed, and it's also beneficial that if they let it go for 2 months and come in and want to have their bill reduced, we can say, well, we notified you, we've documented, we've notified you, and we have a little bit more leverage in negotiating the payment.
Will these work on commercial?
Yes, they work on commercial as well. The overall cost difference to the final product of these is if we go with the current to get the same radio read is $1.6 million. To use the new meter system will be $903,000. So it's a significant savings along the line as well. And I don't know about the rest of y'all, but 20 years from now, I'm not gonna be worried about your meters, so.
And no FCC license.
And no FCC license with the new meter read, so we don't have to worry about whether we got the FCC license in. So what we're asking for is, he's gonna use some of his budgeted money, 2 starter packages, which include everything that we need to get going and provide for now vehicle read, because we won't reach until we replace all the meters, we won't have that capability of pressing the button and reading over the radio. But we're asking for approximately $80,000. It's $39,995 for each starter package, and we're looking for 2 of them. So you're looking at approximately $80,000 that will come out of the water and sewer reserves to get this program underway.
You've heard the recommendation, I entertain a motion.
Before we make.
Oh, excuse me. Any question? I'm sorry.
I would like for us to, recommend this in SPOS because it's shelf ready and ready to go. And it would be saving the city an awful lot. And Joan and Doug.
We could definitely look at it, but I think this, getting these starter kits is probably pretty important to get right away.
Well, I understand that, but I just wanted to say, it is shelf ready, it's ready to go, it's something that we could look at putting in our SPOS.
I actually didn't, but now we're just looking at the categories, and I don't think the categories that were on the ballot are actually.
Nothing? There's absolutely nothing. Okay.
All right.
That's
Got a motion?
Second.
One second, thank you so much. Good presentation, incidentally, Keith.
Thank you.
Any anybody have any questions about, these two starter kits? This price, got a motion and a second on the floor.
The motion is to approve the purchase of the two starter kits in the amount of approximately $80,000 to be paid for out of water and sewer reserve fund.
Okay, those in support of the motion and second, please raise your hand. Those in opposition likewise.
6 in favor.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Let's move on down to the second item, Keith.
The second item is something that's in the CIP plan. For the last 10 years, we've contracted out water loss, having somebody come with a correlator and try and find water leaks. And it's really been, in my opinion, not very successful in what they've been able to do. Last year, it was introduced that there's a new technology out there that one works on plastic pipes, and then there's a second correlator that works on metal pipes. And what this does is allows you to hook up between two water meters. The device listens to it. It used to be you had to have a very trained ear. You had to be extremely versed in what you were doing. The new technology will basically alert you to the fact that there's a leak. And then you take a second, you take a ground microphone and you'll walk in between. Now it will approximate the 25 feet from this hydrant and 50 feet from this hydrant, and then you'll have then you gotta go find the leak. We bought the ground penetrating radar, which can help us locate how deep the pipe is and prepare for that. The ground microphones and listening sticks will allow you to pinpoint where that leak is, and basically it's hearing the cavitation of the water spraying and the air circulating and hitting in the dirt, and that's what it's listening for. We're at 30% on lost and unaccounted for water. We need to be at 15% or better. And the only way to get to that is to find these leaks and patch them and get them taken care of. We can contract this out at $10,000, $15,000 a year and continue the process that we've been doing, but we're still at 30%.
Yeah, that's right.
What we're asking for is to purchase both of the correlators, and then Ronnie's gonna absorb some of the money from what we normally pay the contractor to buy the ground microphones out of his budget, and the training for the equipment out of his budget. So, at that point in time, once this is on the ground, I'm almost gonna assure you, well, I will assure you that within a year, we'll more than pay for this piece of device, or this device. So, anyway, that's what we're doing, we're looking to get the two for.
Do we have, staff now that can use, like, if you had it today, we have staff that can use it today, is that fair to say? Or
Yes, we have staff that actually went out and used this equipment.
This same equipment?
This same equipment. They simulated a leak and they were able to use the leak too. They were training at the same time with Henry County.
Okay.
And then we invited them back to do a simulation of another leak to see whether they could find it, and it works. And it's not, this is pretty much like having the high dollar metal detector that tells you what it is and where it is.
Okay, that was my only concern.
Right, yeah, instead of router coat hangers, so we're going with the new product.
Pete,
So,
do you think it would help us solve that problem over at, Andy Davis's, that reoccurring problem with water that just appears and we haven't been able to figure out where
Yes.
it comes from? Okay.
that's the type of thing
That's
that
the
we're
type
gonna
of
use it
thing
for.
we're talking.
The other thing is he can move through the city fairly rapidly with this device, being on the ground. I mean, they can have two guys working this and then locate where they're at, find where the major leaks are, go back and pinpoint those. The one leak that we had out here on John Frank Ward when they were doing the sewer rehab would have paid for these, and they didn't find that. And the guy that we had come in never found that. So, and that was spraying straight into the sewer. And 100,000 gallons a day is a lot of water. Yeah, it's, that part of that's changed the way that we manage the wastewater plant. I mean, it's that significant that you have to adjust the way that you do things. So, we're excited about this, and I mean, I'm really excited about the fact that if this can, reduce it down to 15%, then, you know, you're saving $350,000 each.
And I hope you're keeping a list of all of this money you're saving and setting.
Yes, I'm looking for a commission.
Okay.
Yes.
Any idea how long this stuff will last, shelf life wise?
The correlators, they have like a 10-year warranty on them, so.
Okay, folks, we need to move forward with this. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And a second, okay? Any other questions, ladies,
No
gentlemen?
question, just an observation.
Okay.
The letterhead, my name's
Uh-oh.
and it's not your fault, it's the print. I'm not listed as a council member.
Well, we'll make sure we don't send this out.
All right, Ms. Price, we got a motion second on the floor.
The motion is to purchase 2 correlators to, for leak detection in the water system for a combined price of $39,400.
Okay, ladies, gentlemen, those in favor of this motion, second.
6 in favor.
That's fair enough. Keith, good job. Good
Mayor,
job.
here's something for Keith to dream about, and for the city to dream about. There's a beautiful piece of equipment out there that, heats up asphalt, pulls it up, pulls the asphalt up, recycles it, and lays it down all at the same time. You aren't even buying new asphalt, and you can drive on it within 10 minutes of it being laid. And
Ah,
I'll bring that to you.
yeah.
it really is that.
Thank
Is that a little cheaper than what you just,
you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Grant, welcome.
We might make some
Ms.
money
Grant's
with
got
it.
a review of financial policy here.
Might be able to make some money with it.
Come up and have a seat, man.
Good evening, Council. These are the same financial policies that we presented, so I'm not going to go over every detail. I'm just going to go and hit some of the highlights starting at page 1. The purpose and the objective of this policy is basically integrity, accountability, and transparency. We're looking at the budget year, under operating budget item number 2. It will be from July 1st and then on June 30th, and it will be prepared annually by the city administrator and presented to mayor and council. Item 2.3, the budget has to be balanced for all funds. We should have 2 public hearings, and it should be adopted, the budget should be adopted by a resolution.
I have at 2.6, and I have some changes I'd like to suggest.
Okay.
I'd like, it says city administrator and department heads, I'd like to include that report to the city clerk, the mayor, and the council members would get that report to
Okay.
2.6.
Yeah, it says the city administrator will present summary financial and budgetary reports to the mayor and council.
First sentence says detailed monthly
Yeah, do you see
financial.
something, that's 2 different reports though, isn't it?
How many pages is the report?
The report is for all departments, is running maybe 100 or something.
That's too much cost to the city. I just see an electronic copy if somebody wants it, but that's too much.
It has a summary page that gives you a summary of the revenues and expenditures.
Yeah,
So
can
that's
you
the first
can you
page.
put
We
it
can
on
do
the
the
request,
first
because
page.
everybody's
Request.
We have,
You print out all
the
that
report that we
information.
sent out the last month for June was the summary page, and that's what I sent out to the mayor and council. So if you want to continue to receive that report, we can send that report out.
Upon request will be fine. Sometimes though, in these summaries, you don't get all the details. And I think as council members, we need to
If
know.
we get the summary report and then we wanna go deeper, then you can request
I mean, we can put in the language here upon
the
request.
full-fledged report, if you wanna go that extra depth.
Just put upon request, and that takes care of it.
But
We
you
still
don't
want
have
summary
that
report.
digital copy anyway, right?
Yes, I mean, we can PDF it. Okay, going back to the budget process, the department heads are responsible for being involved, and they're responsible for submitting and managing their budgets. They are also to participate in the budget process and submit funding requests, that's in 2.4, 2.5. Okay, go to page 2, budget transfers, the budget adjustments, the city administrator will have the authority to approve $10,000 or less for departmental adjustment that is within the departments, they can move within their line items. If it's over $10,000 or is crossing department lines, then we need mayor and council approval, and it must be done by budget resolution. Encumbered funds, that is when they put in a PO that encumbers funds. So at the end of the year, if they have not procured those items, then it will lapse at the end of the year with the exception of the CIP plan. Okay, and then that takes us to item number 3. We define what a capital project plan is. Basically, it's 10 years. The asset must have a useful life of 10 years or more. It has to have a cost of $25,000 or more in order to be considered a capital project.
Juanita,
Yes,
has that been amended by GAP? I thought it used to be 5 and 10. Has it been amended?
well, that's for capital outlays.
Okay.
So this is for projects. Projects have to exceed 25,000. So a project could be construction, it could be replacement or improvements. A capital outlay would be something like a piece of equipment that has to exceed $5,000. Okay, and it has to have a useful life of 2 years, but less than 10. So if it's 10 years, it has to be a capital project. It also requires that we have 3.1 state we have to have a CIP plan, which is for 5 years. We've already developed that, and it must be updated annually. 3.2 talks about the adoption of the budget and amendment control. Basically, again, it says a resolution for the CIP, you have to have a balanced budget, you have to identify the sources, and then you have to make sure that you have a means to fund it. And that those projects, if you have an appropriation under 3.2-2, that appropriation will not lapse. So for instance, if the project is 5 years to complete and you allocated $20,000 a year, it doesn't lapse until you complete that project. So that $20,000 does not revert back to the general fund if the project is completed. And then jump to page 3, reporting, again, this is monthly financial reports.
Once more, it said, reports to the city administrator. Could you also include city clerk, mayor, and council members?
A summary report.
Yeah, on the monthly financial report. And the second part on that page is, I have a question. You can have a debt, which is number 4, but I don't see anything in there about an emergency crisis. What if we went into war or something?
That's going to be addressed later when we start talking about fund balance and reserves. That's what that's addressed in that case.
So you do address
Yes, it's addressed a little later on. Okay, page 3 basically talks about that. The only thing that I would like to highlight here, again, it has to be determined, when it comes to determine that the future user will receive benefit from the improvement, it must be necessary to provide basic services, and it does not constitute a reasonable burden to the residents or taxpayers. And then 4.3 talks about sound financing debt. The things I would like to highlight is that you have to project the revenue source, how you're going to pay the debt back, and the debt that you incur should not exceed the expected useful life of the assets, which is 4.3. And then 4.3-4, and the benefit of the improvement cannot exceed the total cost including interest. Page 4, we talk about revenues. We talked about this several times, I'm not going to go into any details unless you have any questions. Section 6 talks about accounting, audit, and financial reporting.
I have a question. Let me see. Could you, yes, 5.2.7. Could you give me an example of this? Where's one fund, yeah, why would you where you?
There may be allocation of costs, for instance, some of your water and sewer fund, your SPOS, your impact fees, they have administrative costs that's not absorbed under those funds. So we charge an allocation based on services, use of the equipment, the building, the employees, so you have a formula, so generally it doesn't exceed 3% of your of total revenues for administrative costs.
But you're actually charging that against somebody else's budget?
Correct.
Yes.
It's to the fund.
It's called cost allocation, and we should do that.
It goes back to the general fund.
Yes, the revenues go back to the general fund, the expenses is allocated in those particular funds.
Pays it back.
An example of that would be where, and I'll just use this as an example. Stormwater, I don't mean stormwater, let's use water. Overseas water don't do its own accounting. So if you say you can do X amount because accounting is actually, the general fund is actually providing that service to the enterprise fund can actually cost what that is and say, this is how much we will provide to the general fund because that administrative service is actually being done by the general fund, fund activity. So that's what you typically see, it's called cost allocation.
And the shared cost, typically it doesn't exceed 3%. And most grants that you receive, federal guidelines, they have a formula. Typically, you're right around 3% for most of them.
I'll give you another good one. Here's a good one. SPOS. Okay, the county, and this is where when we had the SPOS committee meeting, we had some people who were upset because they saw SPOS administrative costs of $3 million over the whole $51 million SPOS. Some number like that. And they said, well, why are we paying all of that? But obviously the county has a SPOS department that actually manages their SPOS. So they pull their percentage of what by law, transfer that to a SPOS department, and that SPOS department does all the engineering and the administrative costs. We can do that here, but we don't. We don't take that because at that point, if you take that off, let's say we have $100 and it takes $10 to do that, now I only got $90 to spend towards my projects. We just absorb that cost in the general fund for the most part because, and I'll give an example. What I just did to provide that chart, and as I start tracking and tracking that fund, technically I could actually build SPOS for the administrative function that I did to provide for management of the SPOS. We don't do that, but that can happen. That's where you could have that cost allocation. A good example of it. We don't do it, but the county does.
Under 6.3 auditing, you provide the report. The results of the annual audit shall be provided to the mayor and the city council, but I don't see where you, the city manager or the city clerk.
Typically what you have is either a finance committee, an audit committee, or the audit is handled and managed by the finance director or treasurer, whoever's responsible for it. And then once the audit is completed, then you have a meeting with your city administrator and they go over it, and then at that point, once the report is finalized, then you report back to the audit committee. So we don't have an oversight committee, and most governmental agencies don't have them, unless they're large. Pretty large, we may have an audit committee, but we're small, so it's basically done to the finance committee.
And Lolita, I just want to add here that that's the problem with our process right now. It's supposed to remain at an independent status, and as long as there's engagement by the city administrator or engagement by the mayor, as is our current situation, then it ceases to be an independent audit.
Go ahead.
Because the auditor has been compromised.
Page 6.5, comprehensive annual financial report, CAFR.
And that one too is, I would think it shall be provided to the city administrator, city clerk, mayor, and council members.
And typically, it's when it's completed, it's no problem, it's typically posted on.
That becomes a public document like the budget.
It's a document.
So, by virtue of it being developed, that capital goes to everybody.
And the 7.1, I have something there too. Fund balance will be provided quarterly to the mayor, of course, city manager, and the council members. Quarterly report showing what the balance.
That's not a problem, it's when you get the balance sheet, it's automatically generated. Okay, but let's go back to the CAFR report. This is included in the CAFR is the financial audit. Your CAFR basically has statistical information, and this information is used to to basically market, it's a marketing tool for the city. It gives you statisticals on your population, the citizens that you have, your median income. So all of that is statistical information, how much you've had in the past, what your millage rate has been in the past, revenues, things of that nature. That is something that's done with the system of the audit, but it is posted and it should be a public document this year to help market your city.
Well, we can, at some point, I guess when we, later on, as we get to the point where we're developing a capital on a consistent basis, there's another report that's called a PAFA, which is your popular annual reporting report. I know in Griffin we did both. We did the CAFA and the PAFA. And that's something that I'd like to do here, and it's a little bit more,
It's a little bit more
less intense to
compressed
some degree.
than the CAFA. It does not have as many financial reports, kind of consolidated and make it easier to read for the layperson. The CAFA has a lot of information on it, and again, it includes your audited report. And it's done, you did have one done this year, this is the first year you had a CAFA prepared. Okay, fund balance. Fund balance is item number 7. Back 2 years ago, GASB required that we change the titles of your fund balance. Before you had restricted, unrestricted, reserve, unreserved. That's changed. I'm going to drop down to 7.3, and it gives a definition. Non-spendable is what we have to say. These are the 5 categories and how you classify your fund balance. Non-spendable means you cannot spend it. It's generally things like inventory, prepaid items. It's a non-cash item. So that's legally binding. There's nothing you can do about your prepaid expenses and things of that nature for your fund balance. Restricted balance is balance that's restricted for a specific purpose, and that may be done externally by legislation. It may be done by grants, your creditors, or you may have someone that may donate something and put restrictions on your assets. And then you have committed balance. This is a balance that's used for purposes imposed by formal action, which is done by mayor and council, ordinance or resolution, and it includes all funds not designated as non-spendable, restricted, assigned, or unassigned. And these are funds that's transferred to your unassigned balance if you need to pay something that comes up and it's an emergency. This is something that's up to you guys, the mayor and council, to decide whether or not they want to maintain it at a minimum of 20%. That's something that's standard in all, that's being recommended by most governmental agencies to keep, to try to strive for a 20% level.
Is that 3 months? Is that 3 months?
No, it's just 20% of your revenues. Okay, the state requires a 3 month. You should have 3 months of operating expenditures in the bank. Okay, again, this is the highest level of authority and it requires formal action. Okay, assigned balance is balance that's set aside to fund budgetary deficit in the future and subsequent year. It does not require you to have a formal action such as a budget resolution. It could come from your city administrator, or it could come from your council request to have assigned balance. Unassigned balance is the remaining amount that you have in your fund balance. That's after you look at the classification for non-spendable, restricted, committed, and unassigned. Again, if that balance falls below 20%, typically you transfer the funds from your committed balance. If it exceeds 20%, then you transfer from unassigned to the committed. That's the way you generally keep up with those funds. Why do you want to have unassigned balance? What do you do with it? The purpose is basically for cash flow, operating contingencies, loans that may have to be paid back, and insurance and grants. And there's not, grants, when you're looking at grants, you have what they call reimbursable grants. So you put that up front, you need to have funding sources from something, you can pull that out of your unassigned balance. And 7.5, so you just need to do that annually, and then that's where it talks about moving the funds. I'm not going to go into petty cash, which is on paper.
I have a question about petty cash. I read the procedure for petty cash, and I don't understand why we even use petty cash if we have P cards. Because the time you go through all this, filling out these paperwork and get approval, why don't they just go ahead, it's for $50, why not just go ahead and use a P card?
Well, currently, the only department that has petty cash or starter cash is your customer service department. I'm not aware of any other department having any petty cash funds. They are using their P cards. The petty cash that we have, which we call a startup cash, is here for customer service when they open their registers. That's the only cash that I'm
So if
aware
they
of.
need, okay, that makes sense, but it don't if you're gonna have petty cash in every department.
Okay.
Makes no sense
I
at
had
all.
the same question.
We don't, but if it's so desired that we need to have it, we have guidelines already in place to.
I have, on those, I have quite a few issues, and of course, the council can join in on this number 9 down there, city issued credit cards. It's, 9.1, says it's per the approval of the city administrator. I think the mayor and the council should be notified who has the P cards.
We have a list right now, it's who has P cards, but it's kind of impractical for us to kind of, every time we have someone new come on board, I have to wait to get approval.
He's not
Sit
paying,
down.
just being notified.
I just notify us.
If there's a change, and so you're saying you want to be notified if there's a change in
Yeah.
who's receiving credit
I
cards?
think we
because
should know.
Right now, only the department heads, it's the department heads. If there's a need, they really have to justify if there's a reason why there's a credit card, but typically it's limited to your department head and maybe a few others that may have a need for a credit card, but they have to justify. And then in addition to that, we control the limit. Based on the person that's making a request, you may have $500, it may be $1,000. When I first came here, people were wide open with $75,000 credit limit. Alright, we cut that out, so right now, if you wanna know, your department heads have 5,000, with the exception of a few that may need 7,500, but everybody else is below that amount, and most of the people are $1,000 or below.
We need to know who
I'm
has
just
the cards.
questioning, and Roger, this is just to help me out, what would we do with that information?
Well, you know, the next thing you know, who has the card, and this comes up all the time, if we go to breakfast down there, the transportation committee, we have to have a credit card to pay that day. So, and sometimes the mayor's not there.
Well, typically, the city clerk has one. When I came, there was 5 cards unassigned. I cut them off and just deactivated those cards, because what happens if you don't assign a card to a specific person, what happens, you lose accountability. Somebody signed, they may forget to sign the card out, there may be a charge, and we cannot account for that, so.
What I'm saying, though, it says only the named cardholder shall be authorized to use the credit card. They will not, I've been through this, I had to pay for the breakfast. They wouldn't let me leave the place. I didn't have a card.
I think that's why we have the reimbursement system, you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying, though, why don't we have it where if, at least the council members can use the card?
Personally, I don't think purchasing cards should be used for those types of expenditures. That's just my opinion.
No, but you go through I went through the reimbursement, but it takes a while, I'm just saying.
Or you could request a prepayment if you send you to travel and per diem.
Your reimbursement should take, you should get your mayor council typically receive their reimbursements back pretty quick. If I'm aware that there's a reimbursement and I've had a conversation when it came to my attention that you guys is usually the next pay run, we try to get them out within the next pay run from the time that we receive the check run. When we receive them, so we try to reimburse me and council pretty quick when we can.
I had a recent situation where I had a good bid out on behalf of the city and got things taken care of very quickly.
Okay, so I just need to know about them and really definitely make sure it happens.
Okay, I don't have anything else on that page.
Okay, I do want to emphasize a couple of things. 9.2 says that it should be used for city business only. So that means it's not reimbursing for personal expenses on that one. So we need to I want to highlight that. And then it says here, late submittal of credit card documentation may result in credit card privileges being canceled. So we do have, occasions where that may happen. We have not had
document just in case we have any issues with that.
Who reconciles the default transactions?
Basically, every month, hopefully we'll get to the point where we can upload it, but each one of our credit card users, they go in each month, code their expenses, and then they provide the receipts and they give them to accounts payable. Accounts payable takes that, match that with the charges on the bill and pay the entire bill, because we have to pay the bill, we cannot piecemeal. And if we don't have a receipt, we typically contact the user and say, hey, we need your invoices or your receipt. If for some reason a receipt is lost or misplaced, then we give them an opportunity to write an explanation. After the second time, if it happens the second time, then that's when we start talking about, well, we may have to suspend charging privileges. But we have not had any concerns with that. Most of our department heads have turned in their receipts and, we don't have a problem.
Great.
Okay, page number 9 talks about investment, and I'm just going to hit the highlights on this. The purpose of this is to say that we need to invest in safe, invested vehicles. It needs to be, we're looking at liquidity. Return on investment should not be our priority. Basically, it's the secondary importance when it comes to safety and liquidity. And let me jump back to 10.2. Liquidity is important, and this is during the time when you may receive all of your property tax money. That's when we have what we call, we're cash rich. We can take the money and put it in, we can invest it during that period. And then you want it to be liquidity so that you can go and pull that money out at any time. You may invest it in CDs, you may have it in Georgia Fund 1, where you can reach that money at any time. If you have an emergency coming up, you can get those funds pretty quickly. You don't have to worry about needing up 1 year and having to pay a penalty for that. You have to invest it in a CD in a year, you may need it prior to that time. So you have to stagger, and that's what this is about. And then you talk about diversification. You don't want to put all of your money in one type of investment tool. Delegation of authority says that the overall management of the investment program is the responsibility of the city administrator. And it also says that we must comply with the official codes for the state of Georgia. Safekeeping, I'm going to go to page 10. This is important that we're going to use a third party. We need to put we have any investment things like stock, and we need to make sure that that information, if we receive it, is kept at a bank and not kept here on our property.
Here's a point. I know this is kind of being picky, but I get into this all the time. Give a report in a timely fashion. That to me, how many days is a timely fashion? Just like ASAP.
You can receive a quarterly report when you do the quarterly report, and the quarterly report, it will have what's invested in Georgia Fund 1. That's our investment tool right now, Georgia Fund 1. And of course, it goes without saying, conflict of interest, and that is 10.7. 10.8 is important because it states if you're going to select a bank, basically you have to use the procurement process.
I'm sorry, 10.6, where it says, the city administrator or his or her designee shall be responsible for the selection of a financial institution with approval of mayor and council for the purpose of.
So this basically goes back to, take you back to the selection of a bank. 10.8, basically you procure, so that's how you become aware of what facility they're using.
So the selection of the financial institution is covered where?
Under 10.8, when we talk about
So we
selection of
don't
a
need
bank.
mayor, with approval of mayor and council at 10.6?
Yeah, when they do the procurement process, then they have to bring it back to you to approve the process as we go along.
Actually, I think on 10.6, the execution of the written safekeeping agreement, that contract would have to come back to mayor and council for approval.
I know, but.
No, I mean,
I
that.
know, but what I'm saying is before that occurs, we should be aware.
Oh, and fair enough, I was just, and I'm sorry, I'm reiterating the same thing you already said, I was making it to myself.
Before that the mayor and council is aware of, financial
So
institution.
if we put a bid out for financial services for, looking at changing our bank accounts or whatever, from regions to whoever, we put a bid out, what you're saying is you want us to bring the bid to you prior to putting the bid out? Or you want to approve, I'm just, trying to figure out do you want us to come and advise you that we putting the bid out, and then when we put the bid out, y'all want to pick y'all want to be part of the selection process?
No, for the final approval though.
Yeah, I mean, these contracts, yeah, it's part of the.
And that is covered in 10.8, is that what
It's
you're
in
saying?
10 point, yes, ma'am. It says the city of McDonough will
All right,
select.
I just was confused, I'm sorry.
I mean, do you need some specific language in there that says
Well, what
that?
about if they don't require a contract, like what about,
If it's
just,
just-
for
if it's
instance,
just
with
opening
Bank
up a
of
bank
America,
account.
where we just transferred some accounts into Bank of America, and since we were already had accounts on
Absolutely.
deposit with them, they didn't require a contract to do it, so.
Every time you open an account.
Yeah, when you open new accounts, there's a standing agreement that we have on file that's been approved by a resolution that authorizes us to open accounts. So every time we open an account, we listen and we get the signatures and we have the city clerk to sign off on it as well. But the banking institution remains the same.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
But if we change banking institution
Then
and
we
we put
have
a
to
bid
notify.
out, obviously we'll bring that to y'all and let y'all know, so whatever new contractual requirement at that point would be needed, we'll need the signature of the mayor.
Correct.
Which means it has to come before mayor and council.
Okay.
So we're moving all of our banking from Bank of America. We put a bid out and Wachovia, but Wells Fargo wins it. At that point, we bring that to y'all and say, we move, part of the bid we put out for bid. Wells Fargo was the best response. They beat out, we got requirements from Regions, Heritage, and Wells Fargo was the one that provided the best service at the best cost. This is who we'd like to enter into. We need the signature of the mayor, obviously, to execute the contractual to start. And then any accounts we open up with them don't need your approval at that point because we've already got the master approval at that point from the mayor. That's typically what we're in now.
It is, and so that was my question. So you got money at Regions, which you've already previously approved at some point,
Yeah.
and you're gonna take it out and put it in Bank of America. Everybody's copacetic with that and don't wanna know about it. That's fine. Yes.
Any movement of funds from one account to the other will show in your quarterly reports. For instance, when you get your SPOS report and and I'm just using hypothetical numbers here. And if you take money and you move it out of SPOS
Right.
and you put it into Bank of America, you're going to see the balance increase for Bank of America. Or if you take it and you put it in Georgia Fund 1, you will see Georgia Fund 1 balance increase over what it was in the last
If it's
quarter.
over 10,000, it's to come from us anyway, correct?
No, that's when 10,000 is when you're talking about.
That's
line
purchases,
item.
yeah. Purchases, yeah.
And I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with that at all. I just wanna make sure that we're all, we're all on the same page so that
We
we
did,
don't come back later and say, but that's not what we meant.
we did take steps though to consolidate the number of banks that we have, right? At some point, because we used to have just banks that.
Nobody
We
knew
still
what
have-
everything
We
was.
still have quite a few.
We still have some, that was something that was outstanding when before Bonnie got here, and then Bonnie there was a directive for Mr. Beckett and Bonnie them to reduce the number of banks. That was reduced, but it still not reduced to the point where current finance director feels suitable, so that's something we're looking at.
And the reason you don't wanna have a lot of different banks is because you have to pay fees. And those fees could be quite expensive if you don't maintain a certain level of revenues on a daily basis. And so if you have banks, if you have funds in all of these different banks, then you cannot have the same impact. And we're spending a lot, quite a bit, in banking fees. So we're definitely looking to consolidate.
Lolita, I had a question relative to 10.7, and just wondering if we need to add any additional protective language, because it says that someone with a conflict of interest, employees and investment officials who disclose to the city administrator any material interest. It just says that you have to disclose to them. Do we need to have it in writing?
Lee, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think we need to disclose in writing, but there's also some additional guidelines that the state requires when you're investing, so they have some guidelines as well.
Yeah, we have to get anytime, they wanna do business with the city, they have to submit that letter to us, which you guys have to approve, yes,
So
there
can we
are.
put that compliance language there? Because I don't want them to say, well, I told you when you were walking down the hallway, just
Yeah,
to
sure,
make sure
sure.
that compliance language is there. from listening to it.
But there's no reason why we can't just, cover ourselves doubly by putting that language into the policy.
10.9 reports on deposits and investments. And I know you submit a report to the city administrator, but do we get that report too?
Yeah, you'll get it once a year. I mean, what that is basically there's a statement. So if you wanted to come by and look at the statements, that's fine. I mean, just tell me what you need on that, and we can try to see if we can get a report to you.
Well, I don't know that any of us even know all the banks, do we? I don't think any of us are truly aware, so I did need to ask that question, probably would be difficult.
Okay, so would you like a list of the banks?
That would be helpful, just so we're aware.
Okay.
But I hope that you can get the list of banks way down.
We're working on it.
Okay, we move along.
Okay, we're gonna jump down to grants, and, basically, if you jump down to 10.2-1, it says the city administrator is given authority without having to bring the matter before mayor and council to make an application for and accept grants that does not require funding from the city. If it requires funding from the city, then it requires council approval. Okay? 11.3, administration, each department must notify the city clerk and the finance director upon acceptance of any grants. We should have copies of that. We should also be provided with a copy of the grant application, notification of the grant award, any financial reporting requirement and schedules, and the finance director and the city administrator should also receive a periodic reports on the grants and the funds available, as well as the clerk on any reports that's submitted to the planning agency.
Shouldn't that just be once we have a grant, should that be on a spreadsheet with her, with all of that?
Well, and I'll give you an example of where you just saw that actually. The reporting documents that we're using for the LCI, shouldn't have LCI,
Yeah.
for the SPLOST project is typically will be used for LCI grants, where we see what percentage of, so in that instance, we can see where revenue is going.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason this is important is that department heads may apply for grants. The city clerk, the city administrator, and finance director should always know what grants are out there, what the compliance requirements are. And when we do a single audit provision, we have to provide a list of these grants to show what was paid and how much. So that's important for us to have that information.
Can I give you an example of a grant technically that doesn't have a fee? Community Choices through the ALC. They come and they provide a study, they'll do an overlay district for you, they'll do design guidelines for you. There's no fee attached to that. You just have to be an LCI community.
Right.
And we took full advantage of that in Griffin, and I think we've done it here. I think at least one time, we've done a Community Choices here. But that's a grant that doesn't come with any money that comes out of the city's coffers. And typically what they allow for is just a signature of the elected officials, which at that point we bring it to y'all to get it signed. But that's a grant that doesn't require any money on behalf of the city. They come in and they do the work and give us a wonderful study, and then walk out the city and leave us with a nice document that we can then adopt.
And I will tell you that, if you're going to seek foundation funding, one of the things they want to look at is the, grant history. You know that, got that big smile on her face, she knows that. So we do need to be able to, you do need to have that all capsulized and right where it is and whatever.
The last item is your fixed assets. I won't spend a lot of time, just know that a fixed asset, for our definition, is a useful life greater than a year, and the threshold has to be more than $5,000. Repair supplies are not considered fixed assets. If it's an improvement that's going to extend the life, then that's considered a fixed assets. The department heads are ultimately responsible for recording the acquisitions, the transfer, and disposal of all fixed assets. They need to notify the finance director, and we record them within 30 calendar days. The fair, for donated assets, we're recording them at fair market value. And 12.4-3, construction and process schedule. And the reason you want that is you need to know what that overall cost is. That's from the time you do design, land acquisition, to construction, and then you keep up with those costs, and you transfer those costs over to your fixed assets once it's completed. When you're doing fund accounting, you typically expense those each year, so each year you will not, each year when you look at your financials, you're not going to see what the total cost is. You have to keep your construction and progress schedules and you keep it with the total cost.
When you say until completed, is that CO's issue?
Yes, that's
That's the
that's
date.
when it's completed.
Once completed, can be kind of open-ended.
We typically wait until it's available for use, and typically that's when you get your CO. Okay, let's see what else here, transfer of assets. We have to, when you sell, there's some state requirements for benefit, who's all surplus, you cannot, dispose of them or just give them away unless it's to a nonprofit organization. You have to realize you have to have an economic advantage when you sell that. So when you sell it, it needs to be an economic transaction, and we have to follow the state guidelines and federal guidelines, because when you have a grant, there are federal guidelines when you dispose of an asset. So we talked about all of those, and then last one is compliance with state record retention, which is 12.9. The state does have guidelines on what documents you should retain and how you should control those documents. So we're saying that we need to be in compliance with those.
Okay. Very detailed, a lot of work. You need to be prepared out on the 18th to adopt these, subject to the changes, I think, that you have. And unless some of the council members subsequent tonight, will either calls you about any particular matter. But this is something I know you've been working on for some time.
Yeah, I mean, can we adopt them now?
Well,
I think the only thing
we
that-
suggested changes be made though.
I mean, we always adopt things
No, I
subject to
don't think so.
change.
I think we
I know there were
always
some
discuss
verbiage you were
first and we
changing,
adopt
you were
second.
changing.
I'm
So
sorry,
we'll-
Mayor, I didn't hear what you
We
said.
discuss first, ma'am, and then we adopt at a later date. So my preference is, if you come back, make these modifications and adopt it on the 18th. Any other
Mayor,
questions?
my only point is, and this is where it becomes problematic. Lee has captured what the changes are, none of them were major
I
changes.
understand that.
And one of the things that keeps getting put out in the public is that we're not adopting a financial policy, and we just keep pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back.
Well, my recommendation is the 18th, unless the council advises me otherwise, it'll be the 18th. Okay? Thank you so much, ma'am.
Well, I'd like to move to approve, move to approve with stated changes on this evening.
I think I've got all the changes, Sandra. I'd have to get with Ryder and you and Fred and anybody else who made them. I think I've got them all. I was trying to write them down diligently and compare notes with Frederick the entire time to make sure I was getting them as we were going. I think we've got them all. I mean,
I would prefer to wait.
My only concern
So
is.
you got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second, folks? Okay. No second, motion died. Okay. Let's move on with it. If you would, Lee, go ahead and make these suggested changes, and then on the 18th, unless some of the council members have additional information, I'd have to find that's totally unbusinesslike to do that without having a final document.
We would get a copy before the 18th.
We do it all the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely, and I would just, please ask if the notes that you have tonight, if you could just forward those to me so I can compare them against.
The only thing that I want to say, and just so I'll be transparent to the public, I mean, there have been so many communications via email about pushing us back, and I just don't feel like it's fair to staff to continually put in the public that we don't have these policies, and we've been trying to get this policy passed for months.
Okay.
So,
Out of record. Thank you so much. Red, let's take 13 and 14 regional soon, and let's move forward. Yes.
Yes, sir, Mayor. In your pocket, number 13. We're bringing kind of our annual progress report to you.
Thank you.
As it relates to main council retreat, list of items y'all wanted us to work on over the course of the calendar year, not the fiscal year, because we need our retreats in January. Let me see if I can pull this up on the system so everybody can see it a little clearer.
Fred, did the colors or anything?
Say again?
Did the different colors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll talk a little bit about that. The colors basically, the red colors denote that that's something that we've completed, and as you can tell, some of the stuff will be ongoing, ongoing projects. And it's very fine, just because, and I apologize, what I'll do next time we do an update in a couple of months, I'm a landscaper, you'll have more pages, but it'll be bigger, and I do apologize for that, Councilman Nelson.
Okay.
It's the red that I can't read.
Okay, the reason I was trying to find a way to, so y'all to know what's been completed versus what's left outstanding, I'll change that format the next time we do an update for you, and change it so it'll be a little bit more visible. But we have a list of about 51, 52 things that you guys asked us to work on over the course of the year. And I will tell you, it was funny when we met with the Mercy Group last week, and I told him we had 51 stuff, and he looked at us and said, we gotta pare that down some way. That number is just exhaustive. But we've always managed to get somewhere over 90% of these things done over the last 2 years I've been here. So we've been pretty successful in getting them complete. There are some things, obviously, that come with funding restrictions that we can't get done, because we didn't put it as part of the budget process because of funding requirements. There are some that require us working with other governments, and if that's not important to them, that obviously, and one of those being one that I think has been an issue since I've been here, probably before I got here, was the issue of the ambulance at the fire station. Well, we tried to address that as part of the SPOS 2012. We tried to address that during the SPOS committee with the chief. I brought that up in 2012, 2013 with the county fire chief, and he said they don't have the resources to do it. And then when we did our own estimates, where's the fire chief walk out? The cost is really expensive to man a truck, a ambulance at the fire station on our own dime. Very expensive, because you have to have the shift, because you just can't have one person. You have to have a shift that replaces that crew on a shift basis. So it's you're talking about 3 to 6 people to rotate out in order to keep an ambulance service there on a 24-hour basis, if we fund it. I know there was some negotiations with the county on that deal, and that's been outstanding, and they don't seem to want to move on it. Chief, we were talking about the issue of the ambulance at the fire station 51 or 52.
Yes, sir.
That outstanding agreement with the county that they haven't come up on, it's still on our list and probably continue to be on the list, but
Well, it's been on the list since 2000, before we actually constructed, and then 2001 the building was built for that purpose.
But they've never funded an ambulance at our location.
That's correct.
And right now, they're not looking to do it. There's no movement by the county to address that. So some of the things we've been working on, annual evaluations of our department heads, we've been doing that. We started the weekly reports, and then we basically said, let's look at another format. We've been trying to come up with a multi-format that's suitable to capture all of our information, and still working on that. Attorney prepares ordinance amendments and transfers for budget limit. We adopted that policy already, so that's completed. Comprehensive communication plan, we have a draft one available, and I know that was something that Councilmember Vincent was pushing for us to look at, and sent over a draft copy of her a couple of days ago to look at, to see if she can give us some feedback, and I'll send that out to everybody tomorrow. It's about 6 pages. Zoning, senior zoning ordinance, I've been researching that and working on that. I'm actually now, we got our consultants on board, I've asked them to kind of see if they can give us some examples of some good ones that we can use, and push that ahead of, so I'll be meeting with them tomorrow to get up to speed on them as to how fast they can get us a couple of drafts so they could submit to y'all, and y'all can peruse and then bring back what you think is a good one we can look at. LCI Streetscape, that's one that's been pushed back, that was one that Mr. Chief was supposed to do for us, and Rodney's now been trying to catch up with that project, so as soon as he feels comfortable, we'll bring that to y'all before